If you're constantly asking yourself why you can't execute on the things that you're trying to execute on, this is your answer, right? You're not actually lazy. You just lack the self or the correct self-image. Okay, let me put it this way, yeah? Let's say you're from London, yeah, and you wanted to drive to Essex, for example, okay? You wouldn't stutter on the decision. Let's say you could actually drive and you had a driving license, right? You wouldn't stutter on the decision to take that drive, right? If you knew you could drive. Same way, you wouldn't hesitate to eat your breakfast, right? I know this sounds so stupid, but like this is literally what's happening. You wouldn't hesitate to make your breakfast, for example, in the morning or eat your breakfast, right? But you might hesitate to start your business or talk to that girl or change something in your life, wake up early. And the biggest issue that you have is more about your self-image. It's more about who you believe you are. That's the fundamental core, and I'd say the biggest issue that you have. That's the reason why you can't execute on these things. So like, let's say, for example, you want to start a business, right? The only reason you're not executing on your business is because you feel like that you're not worth enough. That why would people listen to you? Why would people buy your product, right? Because if I said to you, let's say you wanted to start a business, I said to you, okay, cool. What's the first steps? You know what your first steps are, right? Everyone knows what their first steps are. If I want to grow this YouTube channel, for example, I know I need to pick up the camera, I need to go somewhere, I need to record a video. It's very, very, very simple, and everyone knows what they need to do. However, what people don't know is essentially what's stopping them from doing that, right? Something that I've been thinking about a lot recently is people's relationship with fear and people's relationship with adversity. Okay, I've been reading this book recently called The Expectation Effect. I can't remember who wrote it, but the whole idea about the book is how essentially your expectations shape your entire reality, right? One of the analogies in the book was, or a scientific study inside of the book, right, was how the people in the study react to fear, right? And what the scientists noticed was that if the test subjects, we'll call them test subjects, right? If the test subjects believed that, or we'll call them the people in the study, I think the test subjects are a bit crazy, right? If the people in the study had the belief that stress, right, ruined their ability to perform, ruined their ability to let's just say to perform or actually no, I'll put it a different way. In that study, they believed that stress was causing them like physical discomfort. It put them at a disadvantage. It didn't allow them to flow, to be able to do the things that they wanted to do. If they had that perception of that's what stress was, then in their day-to-day life, stress would impact their life very negatively, right? It would cause, let's say the cortisol spike would cause anxiety or cause them to have sort of this feedback loop of poor self-belief. And contrary to that, right, you had another group that believed that success dialed them in, right? Because the funny thing about stress, right, is you'll know the science behind it, right? Cortisol spikes, etc., etc., etc. But these things also have positive effects. So, for example, if you are stressed, your mind's more alert. All right, there's certain things about memory that can be enhanced. There's certain things about having your wits about you and having sort of an edge in, let's say in a sport, for example. Let's say if you were going to have like a boxing match, you'd want to be you'd want that anxiety, you'd want that level of stress because you'd want your reflexes to be on point, right? So certain things in when it comes to stress can also be positively affecting people. And what they noticed was that the people who had a good perception of stress, they would receive all the benefits without the negatives, and vice versa. The people with the poor perception of stress just received all the shit things that stress came along with, right? So looping that back to what we were talking about originally, about the fact that people are essentially, let's say, they evoke a stress response with regards to the thing that they're trying to achieve, inevitably they're going to start viewing this adversity and viewing this stress as a really bad thing, right? So next time you are stressed, right, really start to think about the positives that you're going to get from that stress, number one. But number two, just because you are feeling stressed and just because you are feeling anxious, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It doesn't mean that you should stop. It doesn't mean that you should halt. You're literally being given, your brain is priming yourself to act better in a scenario based on that stress response, right? This was another really good thing that someone told me about anxiety. It was in, I think, 2018, potentially, right? 2019. And what she told me was that this feeling of anxiety, you know, this sort of racing heart style feeling, or this jittery anxiety feeling. Everyone knows who maybe had anxiety or suffered with anxiety would know exactly what I'm talking about, right? This sort of like overcast feeling. And what this woman told me essentially was that the feeling of anxiety is not the enemy, right? In a way, it's normal. It's a normal response that the body, right, will give to certain scenarios. It's not a negative thing. The only negative thing about it is just being in a perpetual state of anxiety, which is fundamentally the issue that, let's say, you potentially will be in. So effectively, when you bridge your relationship with anxiety in a different way, right? When you change your self-image to someone that isn't riddled with anxiety all the time, it's just someone that is, you can't, like, every human is fearful, every human has anxiety, but to label yourself as if you have anxiety, you have depression is where the issue comes in, essentially. So yeah, I rambled a bit today, but we roll with it, and yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that, and I'll see you lot in the next one.